Doot, doot. Whew, Owen, we are. Well, it's happening. It's Thursdage, and I have wanted to just lightly, gently turn down that music, and instead, I did not do that. And so, what I will do is say, do 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 do. It is Owen. Look at you. You're far away from. That's not the way that's supposed to be. Watch this. A boom. That's what we wanted. Hi, Owen.
Hi, Troy. How you doing?
I'm doing good on this Thursdage. Good Thursdage to you, and good Thursdage to all who are tuning in. I see everyone lining up. That's awesome. Um, I see we've got some. Jason Waltman's already up to some storytelling in the chat. I like that. Chris says hi, Owen. Hello, good Thursday to you all. We've got people who are on Facebook. We've got people who are on Twitch. We've got people who are on YouTube. Well, they're all over the place. And they're hanging out to talk to us, Owen, because today we've got hello, Brian. Brian F. Irving says howdy. A good evening to you. And my question, Owen, this is such an inspired topic. How did you come across it? It's just brilliant.
Yeah, so today's topic is what to do when you don't have anything prepared. And Troy and I came up with this topic a few hours ago because we didn't have anything prepared. And I'm not kidding. This is literally a show where we have done no prep, no pre-discussion. We had meant to, and then the week got away from us. And Troy's going to laugh at this. At the last Green Running Company meeting, there was this moment where we all forgot what day of the week it was. So
that's right.
we just haven't done our due diligence here. But as some friends of mine at Paizo used to say, we're going to treat that as a problem-tunity. We will look at this as a chance to show you how you can fill some time when you have absolutely no idea what you're doing.
That's great.
And that's without even knowing any soft shoe. So this is all about winging it.
So talking about your problem tunity, I'm problem tunity. I'm thinking I have to put a dash in there. You think?
No, definitely not.
No dash, you think?
No dash, no.
Just problem
Yeah,
tunity.
just ram that word together.
I'm going to ram it together, and I like it, and I'll show it. How do you fix your problem tunity? I love it. I like it. I'm going to pretend like we made it up here on this program, and copyright us. But I love it because I think that here's the thing. I don't know what the percentage is, Owen. You tell me what you think it is. There is preparation is always important. When you want to do that kind of stuff. But I mean, how many panels have you been on where you just were there to be you, to step up and do your thing? Like, do you prepare for that kind of stuff, or do you wing it?
So I got to say, when it comes to like panels and such, I try really, really, really hard to read the description of the panel at least a few minutes before the panel.
Right.
And I literally mean read the description, because just the title doesn't always tell you what the show's about. And I got into this habit because I had a few panels where I read the title of the panel and I thought, oh, I can speak to that. And I got there and everyone was just staring at me because it was an ironic title and they're literally trying to cover something else. And that's a little embarrassing. Although again, you can turn it into an opportunity to discuss how to flip the script once you realize you're going in the wrong direction. So I have been on panels with some real professionals who want to get together in advance and have an email thread or get together on a message board and discuss it and talk about what we're doing. And then I've had panels where I had absolutely no idea. I did a panel on creating a pantheon at one point, and I literally had zero time for prep. I was assigned to the panel the day before. I had no idea what I was doing. And I had a blank piece of paper and a pencil. And as people were filing in, I came up with the idea of creating God's Mad Libs style. So literally, I put down a blank and said, okay, the favorite animal is this, and the 3 areas of concern of this god are one social concern, one form of entertainment, and one kind of crafting. And so when it got to and everyone on the panel was talking about, gods in the real world tend to be a little weirder than they are in role-playing games, right? You've got, Pluto, god of death and money, death and taxes. The 2 things you're always sure of is Pluto, but those things don't necessarily really make a lot of sense together. Dead people don't pay taxes. And so I had this Mad Lib set up and I just had people call stuff out. And I said, okay, we now have this god who's the god of academic probation, growing squash, and badgers. And now you have to take those 3 ideas and make a god out of it, try and weave those things together. And the crowd did. They did a great job. That was what panel was so popular that we took a improved version of my Mad Lib and ended up putting it up on the website. So sometimes a flash of inspiration is the answer, right? Oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Hey, let's do a show about having no idea what we're doing. And then the problem is, in air quotes, solved, because at least you have a direction you're going.
I love it. And here's the thing. I think as we often do by our programs, we've inspired people who are now, thinking, they're just coming up with things on the spot. But it might be a little more than that, right? I mean, so the story that I kind of prepped in our social stuff was, all right, you set aside some time, you wanted to plan something for the evening. You got people coming over, you got all your buddies, you got some snacks, you got all thing, and then work hits and you are just under the gun and you continue to do all the things you do, which is not unusual, not an unusual occurrence in our day and age. And then when you look up, you're like, oh my gosh, I have very little time. So what's that, given that scenario, what's the span of time that we want to work with, knowing that, it'll happen in many different ways, but ultimately we've run out of time. So, I mean,
I think the ultimate not being prepared is when the doorbell rings because you didn't set your clock back because it's daylight savings times and people are here now and you thought that they wouldn't be here.
All right. Well, this is hardcore. You were like, it is right this second.
It's
done
go time. Right.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
And there are a couple of ways that you can handle that, right? If you are with friends doing a social event, the first thing you can do as a game master is come clean. Hey guys, crazy week, didn't reset my clocks, didn't think you'd be here. And sometimes your players will open up with, oh, well, would you rather play Yahtzee? I'm looking at the board game bookshelf from here, or
Jason just
Dungeon or Apples to Apples, or right.
Candyland.
Yeah, I mean, Candyland isn't a game. Candyland is a test bed for people to learn how games work when they're 3. But because Candyland has no decisions. So it's not a game. It's a toy that takes a long time to determine which color it's going to be at the end. So that's one possibility is to just see if people are on the same page as you. Do they want to keep playing? There's also the, hey, can I have 10 minutes solution, in which you think you've got an idea. It's just going to take you a few minutes, and you can tell people, hey, talk amongst yourselves. Any topic will do.
Well, so here's a
The
question.
Holy Roman Empire was not holy, nor Roman, nor an empire. Discuss, and then you whip something out.
Here's a question. Should we ask, let's pretend it's the people who are watching right now that have shown up. Do they let you? Do they let you?
No. So I was specifically talking there about the group of friends in a casual setting, and theoretically, we're a professional podcast. So that brings you to your other scenario, where you've got to set aside time slot, and you're sort of on the hook to run something. And that could be, you might have friends that have very specific time constraints. This is the only time they get to see you, and this is the only time they get to play. You could be running something in an event. You could have a game day or something of the sort. So sometimes, you feel you really need to run this game, even if you're not ready, and that puts you in a different place. Now, if you haven't prepared anything and you are trying to run a pre-written adventure, so you've got you converting something from an old Against the Giants line, or you've got an adventure path, you have some of our short PDFs for adventures for Fantasy Age, whatever it is, you can prep that one thing at a time. And you can do things like, hey, you all introduce your characters to each other for the first game session, and I'm going to read the first encounter. Or if you know where people are going, you can say, okay, you all are going to be taking a path through the woods, because that's where the adventure starts. Everyone, give me a reason your character's going through the woods. So you can put some of the work on the players. You can look at them and say, look, this adventure occurs because you're all deciding to take this narrow path through a dark and dangerous wood. Why are you doing that? And then while the players are figuring that out, they're creating that part of the story for you. You can read the next encounter. You can go a few feet ahead.
A quick question, just a point of clarification. So when this happens, are we presuming that the people who've joined us for the evening don't know that we're unprepared? Are we trying to come in under the radar here?
That depends on how good you are at doing that. Okay. Some of the greatest game sessions I have ever run, I had no idea what I was doing until the first player suggested something, and that gave me a riff of a direction to take things. It also depends on how deep your toolkit is, and I'll talk about that for a little bit. If you are running, for example, a Fantasy Age game, your toolkit presumably includes the basic rule book, which has a short adventure in it, and a short bestiary section. Hopefully it includes layers, which literally has pre-set up layers of encounters and threats, and hopefully the bestiary, which is a list of monsters. Your toolkit might also include, hey, I've got some miniatures, or I have some props, or I've got a cool map right at the moment, right? I just recently finished putting together this much of a paper ship that happens to be on 1/56 scale. What do I have that I can whip out that will absorb some of the impact of an encounter being prepped up? So if I've decided, hey, you guys are going to be taking a journey, and I say, okay, the journey is going to be on this ship down a river. Here's the ship, because my toolkit includes this physical prop. I can get it out, and then I can do things like, where are y'all going to sleep? What are your watches going to be? Where are you going to put yourselves? And the players will both eat up some time, so I can come up with some other issues, but they will also say things, in my experience, that you can then riff off, right? Someone will say, well, I know that there are going to be other people traveling with us. I don't want anyone to steal any of our stuff, so I want all of our stuff in one place and bundled together. Then I'm like, well, that's the first encounter, right? Despite doing that, someone's going to be stupid enough to try and steal your stuff. Mm-hmm. Now I can just make perception tests, see what you notice. And I don't have to plan for that to succeed, right? I don't have to be thinking, oh, they're prepared for it, so now I can't do it. If someone's going to try and steal stuff from you, failure is in many ways a better encounter. Sure, plus, it lets the players go, oh, we prepared for this. We're ready for this. We give it some thought. We put our, maybe we wrapped a string full of bells around it and we hear the tinkling. Whatever it is, when the players tell you what they're worried about, what they're trying to prevent, they are also telling you what they think could happen. And that takes a lot of the workload off you coming up with what could happen. If they're saying, hey, I want to sleep with my ear against the hull because if there are crab people that are going to try and drill through the bottom of the boat. I want to hear them coming. And you're like, I never even thought about crab people drilling through the bottom of the boat. But now that you're putting your ear there, all sorts of things become possible. I could do crab people, or I could say, well, I don't want to do crab people because I've never mentioned them in a campaign before, but you keep hearing the scraping sound and it turns out
tinkling.
that maybe...
Yeah.
Yes, right. And then you just wonder what will make that noise. And the players will wonder what will make that noise. And do they stop the ship? Do they start diving under it? Right. And you can come up with anything that would make a noise. Hey, it turns out that what's under there is a wooden mannequin that has been painted to look like the nearest town's mayor that's being dragged across the river by a rope. I don't have to have any idea why that's under there at first. I just have to have a thing. And then the players will go, oh, I wonder if this is someone doing a ritual of some kind, trying to drown the mayor. So it's all sympathetic magic. And I'm like, well, yeah.
Oh, it sounds like you might have knocked your mic out, but real fast, I want to say, Stan, we'll see you later. Stan's got to run. He'll be demanding the highlights from you, Owen, once you are back. And still can't hear you, but I did want to say, for Slit's here, and Slit wants to know, what should the wife and I have for dinner? Our fate is in your hands. Let us ponder that. I want to suggest something not difficult, but that is delicious. So stay tuned. We'll
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can indeed. I can indeed.
So you should have pizza for dinner. When in doubt, have pizza.
There you go. When in doubt, Slit, have some pizza. You and your wife will enjoy. Let's see. Any else?
Charlotte wrote, oh my God, I'm late. What did I miss? You didn't miss anything because we're discussing what to do when you don't have anything prepared. So we didn't have anything prepared. So we're just discussing how to muddle through when you've got nothing prepared.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So this is, fish and chips. Yum. I like that. I do like a fish and a chip. Right. Yeah. So we're solving the problem that every human being on this earth and beyond has faced, and that is coming up late. You're scrambling to get things done, and boy, with when you're playing tabletop role play games, there's some work that needs to be done, especially if you are the GM, especially.
Well, and there tends to be a lot of work that needs to be done. For most game sessions, you can frequently get away with very little work for one game session. There are, in my opinion, two flavors of low prep game session that are easy to get away with. The first is when everything is obvious. If you told people that they are sneaking up on a band of goblins, and they were just about to try and rescue crab people that have been kidnapped by the goblins from the goblins, and they were about to leap out, and you put it off till the next week, then it's goblins. What it is goblins. Now, would it be nice if you had time to think about, there's one goblin shaman and two goblin lieutenants, and there's a whole bunch... Apparently, Slit's actually having Red Robin instead of pizza. They may have pizza at Red Robin. You might be able to do both.
That's true.
But you can just grab any old stat blocks and say, these are goblins. And we've discussed, turning goblin stat blocks into fez-wearing spiders that have nets. Yeah. You can do the reverse. If you happen to have stats for a manicore, then you just say, hey, there's one really swole goblin that appears to have a pair of bamboo and leather wings that he flies around on with a repeating crossbow. Yeah. And that is suddenly, instead of a manicore, it's the goblin great hero who has been banding the goblins together to wage war against the poor innocent crab people.
And he's come all tinkling all over the place, ready to cause
exactly.
Yep, I love it.
So reskinning is one of the easy ways to fill in the gaps. The other thing that can be pretty straightforward when you have very little prep is when there is nearly nothing. Apparently, Slit's getting yelled at because I'm saying Red Robin out loud. If people had no idea what was happening next, you can do the random encounter. Now, random encounters in many ways date back to a previous age of tabletop role-playing games, where it was extremely common for every region of a campaign to have a table on it that had a list of things you might run into entirely at random. So you could have, two crows, crab person war party, a manticore, and then sub 1, a goblin pretending to be a manticore, small dragon, bandit, lost child, whatever.
Ugh, those lost children are horrible.
Lost children. Yeah. Well, and when people run into a lost child in the wood, no matter how reasonable that child's backstory is, people usually assume that it's a polymorphed dragon. Right? The deeper, darker, more dangerous, and you can hear the sounds of battle. You can come up on a caravan, a heavily armored caravan that you've been told for 5 game sessions is trying to make it through the woods, and everyone's dead except one child. And it's perfectly reasonable that one child survived. They're small, they hit it or something. The attackers fled when the PC showed up. And at least half those players are going to go, that isn't a child. That's a polymorph dragon pretending to be a child. You can't fool us.
Always those children. I don't trust them in real life, nor do I trust them, in the dark woods. Okay, well, so now we've talked about tables and things.
Yep.
It as generally as I do recall back in the day when you just had tables for everything.
Yep.
And have we kind of moved away from that, or is that still, have we just tabled everything and we're good?
So, a lot of people don't like using tables because they're trying to do a more controlled narrative, right? They don't want a random encounter, especially since, at least originally, the random encounters might well not have anything to do with the theme of your game or the capacity of your players, right? If you were playing back in Temple of Elemental Evil, for example, you could have a random encounter that was 2 to 16 ghouls as second level characters.
Yeah, okay. That's
2 ghouls you might be able to handle. 16 ghouls, there's a good chance they're going to wipe out the party. A lot of people liked that because it meant whenever you crept up on an encounter as a player, you had no idea whether it was something you could handle or not. You didn't know if it was going to be out of an appropriate difficulty level or challenge rating, or, is this a moderate threat? Is this a major threat? And a lot of people hated it because you had no way of knowing. And it's not necessarily fun if you are constantly sneaking up on encounters, checking them and going, oh, we can't take that. No, we can't take that. No, we can't deal with these guys. And you can have an entire evening of running away. A lot of us have enough of that in our real lives without doing this gaming. But those tables, even if you don't have any written down, and I do sometimes try and do prep for when I don't have prep. I do sometimes go, hey, I've created the Big Bad Darkwood, and it's with a little trademark at the end. Big Bad Darkwood. The campaign has the Big Bad Darkwood, and I am writing down some things that might be in the Big Bad Darkwood, and then if people ask about the Big Bad Darkwood, I will be able to tell them, well, according to the pamphlet that you picked up, when it says you have to be at least this tall to adventure in the Big Bad Darkwood, it mentions that there are flying goblins and crab people engaged in a war, and there's a caravan route through it, and there are polymorph dragons, and whatever I want to have in there, I can tell people is a possibility. And I can also throw in some rumors, right? Because it's always fun when you, as the GM, I'm not saying lie to your players, never do that, but by all means, do give them inaccurate information their characters come across, right? The world is not full. Anyone who's been on the internet knows that the world is not full of purely good information. So if the characters are going to run across bad info, by all means, give it to them. And then once I've done that, I have set the stage. And if I come into a session with no prep, I can look at what have I said about this region, what expectations have I set up, what can I whip out that would not surprise people because they know it's going to be there. I have what I call the assassin principle, which is anytime I run a campaign, I try to early on establish that there is a good reason for some specific group of stealthy killers to try and sneak up on and kill the players. Like in my current Really Wild West campaign, they have been facing specifically some teleporting snake folk assassins. So they know at any moment, if the snake folk assassins find them, they will teleport into the encounter and attack them. Now, I only use that very occasionally, but having established it with the players knowing that the snake people are trying to destroy them, that they can teleport, that they're stealthy, that they have poison, that they're killers, anytime I run out of things to do in an evening, I can just drop snake folk on the players. I already have their stat block up. I've already established it's going to happen. right? If you're doing a superhero game, you can have, the executive vice intelligence council and or executive vice intelligence league evil, which shows up and tries to destroy you periodically.
Or if you're just like hanging out around, like your friends have just come over for a potluck, just drop a bunch of snake people right in the
Yeah,
middle
no,
of it.
absolutely.
Just keep it spicy, I say.
That actually leads in very nicely to another way to have a nice game session when you don't have anything planned. And that is the players come across a potluck. Depending on your group, there are a lot of groups that really enjoy an opportunity to talk to people and get to know them and make friends. And that's sometimes something that a GM may just not have left enough time for in a campaign. So if your past few sessions have been explore, fight, loot, explore, fight, loot, explore, fight, loot, by all means, just say, hey, you all come across a small town and you're all invited in because it's time for the Stone Soup Festival, which is an ancient tradition to when they were set up in town, where they put a stone in a giant kettle and everyone adds just a little something. And, it's the thing
Sled?
is that the stone doesn't.
Go ahead.
What?
You go ahead. Finish your sentence.
The claim is that the stone will make soup, but everyone knows that actually it's just a little bit of other stuff everyone adds. And then the players are invited to come in and they will look through their supplies. What can I add to the soup? What's the tradition of stone soup? Where is this from? You can pull on any fables or backgrounds or lore or previous games or scenes from a book you're reading, anything to go, hey, here's a neat setup that I think these players would enjoy exploring and talking about and doing stuff with.
I love it. I was going to say, Slit, that's my recommendation for you. You make a stone soup, you and your wife, but you only have 2 ingredients and one of them is the stone. So there you go. Enjoy.
Well, we could go right back to pizza because it could be a stone-baked pizza. On a pizza stone.
Owen, you are so unflappable today that you're unflapping our friends who are watching. I love this.
I do want to spend some time discussing some potential pitfalls that you can run into when you are trying to run a game with no preparation. I advise against introducing anything wildly out of existing continuity. Unless you are running a Wahoo over-the-top game to begin with, in which case all bets are off. But if you're doing a traditional fantasy age style game where people are going along and they're dealing with threats and they're looting for treasure and there are big villains, just because you didn't prepare something, don't have them see a starship crash in the nearby mountain range. I don't have a problem with putting crash starships in fantasy games. There's a long tradition of them. Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser ran into a time-traveling German in a power suit in one of the Fafhrd and Grey Mouser Fritz Lieber stories. There's Expedition of the Barrier Peaks. There are a lot of examples of sci-fi in fantasy. But you don't want to add it to your game just because you didn't have anything else and you're trying to shock people and drop them and make it sound like you had a great big reveal going. It is much better to do minor things that you're familiar with to fill up the time, to give them a chance to have a good time, to look at styles of encounters that maybe you haven't done enough. And you can flip through the rule book for that. We'll get to that in a minute. Rather than pull out something really wild and say, hey, you all wake up and the moon is split in half. Because if you break the moon, you're stuck with that. And if you haven't seriously thought about breaking the moon, people are going to start going, is this affecting tides? Hey, my character worships the god of the moon. Is he been split in half? You can create a lot of problems for yourself if you go too extreme, too out of the norm for your low prep, zero prep game. I mentioned looking at a rule book. One of the things you can do is grab the rule book of whatever game you're playing, flip through it, and see what rules subsystem you have not used recently. If you're playing Fantasy Age and you have not done any hazards recently, then add a hazard. The rules are right there. The difficulties of the various tests are listed. If they're going through the woods and you haven't handled a hazard recently, they can run into a forest fire. There could be some flooding of a river. They could run into a run-amok toxin mushroom that they have to get through. Just take a rule set that you haven't used much, because the fact that you haven't used it means that that's a type of encounter that hasn't come up much in your game, and throw something simple together using those rules. And the fact that it's pretty basic will be offset a great deal by the fact that these aren't rules that this campaign has interacted with much.
I
Pardon
dig
me.
it. No, you're fine. You're fine. I love, one day what I'm going to do, Owen, is I'm going to go through our chat and I'm going to extract all the things that Jason says and I'm going to knit it together in an adventure. Like there is something happening there. It's a brilliant thing to watch and to behold. I do want to ask the folks in chat real quick. Tell me your story of how you triumphed, or maybe how you didn't triumph, and what you like, what happened when you were coming in to coordinate or connect. Maybe you had a GM, you were a player who pulled something off just miraculously, or maybe they didn't so much. Tell us about it and we'll share it on the stream.
All of that is a short form of actually a long form, I guess, of don't sweat it too much. Ideally, you are with a group of people you like, engaging in an activity where you're all trying to have fun. So if you didn't get a lot of preparation in, some sessions are shorter than others. And you can start by asking people if they've got any unfinished business, right? Has everyone updated their characters? Have you all divided all the loot you've gotten? Is there anything that people were wanting to go around and ask at the various lore sections? And that can buy you half a game session right there, depending on your players and what's going on. But it also makes it an opportunity to catch up. If your players are talkative, whenever you haven't prepared anything, write down everything they say and just short versions as you're setting up simple encounters, because they can lead you to the next encounter. I also find it very useful to make notes like that when I'm running a game, even when I know what I'm doing, so that it can come up later. If I did at one point have a ship that had a wooden doll of the mayor dragged under it, and we've never gotten to it, we've never mentioned it, we covered it once, and then we went on and did other things. If I have a note of, hey, I've gone through all my notes and here are the things that have come up that have not been resolved, then I can look at one of those and say, oh, I was going to do this whole big plot with this wood construct maker who is going to paint up a bunch of wooden soldiers who are going to attack town, but I'm not going to do that anymore. They've moved on. They're not in that town anymore. This is just a dangling plot thread. I can wrap that up by having the players show up, and when they wake up, their campsite has little dangling wooden versions of all of them, and it turns out that there's a evil fairy that has been trying to replace them with wooden changelings, and it's a fight, and I pull out one stat block, and then everyone goes, oh, this guy must have been shadowing us for 8 game sessions since we ran into the thing on the ship. So looking for dangling plot points, things that have not been taken care of, things that you don't have any other plans for, can be a great way to not have anything prepared and yet be running a game that seems to be rooted deeply into what's going on with people.
I love that. So, so we talked a little bit about tables and things. What are the physical tools that you think? I mean, because here's the other thing that this problem solves, or this problem tunity solves, is that sometimes maybe it's the other way around. Like, you didn't plan on doing it. It wasn't even a plan to do any kind of a get together or something, and then suddenly it shows itself. People are hanging out. You're doing all kinds of great stuff, and so now it's a matter of like, okay, what do we do? Do we just play a game? Do we just do what? So
yeah, it's absolutely true that it might be one of the reasons that you don't have anything prepared is that you all weren't planning to sit down and have a role playing game, but suddenly that seems like the thing to do.
Yeah.
Last year at one point we were out of power for 4 days, and at one point a friend of ours said, hey, we've got dice, we've got pencils, we've got candles, I'll come over and we'll play a game, because we could do that with no power. So we just threw together 2 or 3 sessions of a game so that we had something to pass the time, because we could not get on the internet, we couldn't do the laundry, we couldn't do the dishes, we couldn't turn on lights. So if you're doing that sort of thing, usually one of the first steps is pick a game system, pick a power level, have people make characters. When doing a thing like that, I frequently, if I want to get off quickly to a fast start, I frequently want to ask the players, hey, give me a hook on your character, right? What character you're making? Well, I'm going to play a mage who does the fate arcana primarily. Okay, great. Give me a hook for that character. Why is that character an adventurer? What's going on with them? What's important to them? And if every player comes up with one hook, then that gives me a tool set that I can build from quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You asked me about the tables. The internet, which everyone watching this has because you're watching this and it's on the internet, can be a fantastic tool for random tables. And I'm literally taking a chance here. I'm on Google and I'm typing in random woodlands RPG encounter table. All right, I have typed that in and I have, let's see, 5e D&D forest encounters for all levels, 20 forest and characters on Red Dice Diaries, random encounter tables, role-playing tips from John 4, a million Reddit threads, random wilderness encounters for D&D 5e. So this is another example where if I didn't have an idea, I can click on Feywild encounters and take those encounters, and they may well not be in my game system. But if I have mastered or even begun the art of reskinning, I can click on something, pick a random encounter, and take a stat block, whatever stat block I need. And this is one of the places where Fantasy Age can be great. You can do anything with a series of tests just with a few target numbers, right? If you want to have people try to get through what you are borrowing as being a World War I landmine scene, but instead it's explosive mushrooms, right?
Oh, yeah.
The mushrooms on this field have been weirdly mutated, and if you step on them, they explode. And now all the things that people do in those World War I scenes, I'm prodding with a stick ahead of me. Can the herbalist disarm them? All of that you can just do by saying, okay, they're mushrooms, so they're not that complicated. I'm going to say it's a target number of 9, and any skill that a player pitches to me that sounds reasonable, I just tell them to make a test, and if they get 4 successful tests, they're through, and for every failed test, I'll do 2 dice of damage. And that's an encounter. You've created an encounter out of nothing but a few numbers and a concept. In fact, you can create an encounter from a World War I war movie for your Fantasy Age game. So those, I don't have my book with me because I wasn't prepared. But there are target numbers, sample target numbers for what's difficult in Fantasy Age. And you can use those really easily to throw together an encounter. There are only a certain number of abilities. They all have a certain number of focuses. You pick some target numbers, and you don't, as a GM, you don't have to tell people how much planning has gone into an encounter. And you don't have to tell them, hey, I'm figuring everyone will try to make a pick locks check to represent removing a mushroom without blowing it up. All you have to do is tell them, you've discovered that you've wandered into a field and you now realize this field is littered with explosive mushrooms. What are you going to do? And they can be like, well, what can we do? Well, I mean, you're aware of the situation. Look at your skills. Tell me how your character is going to try and get out of it. So someone can say, well, I'd like to try and retrace our steps exactly out of here. Great. That's a perception test, or it's a survival test, or it's tracking. That is pretty straightforward. You didn't have to work out that was an option in advance. You've just created a situation. As long as you keep the situation pretty basic, the players can figure out a way out of it.
I dig it. That's brilliant. You know, I do have the bestiary up. Do you want to show it as a reference, or do you
sure, yeah, pull up the bestiary. So another thing in Fantasy Age, if you are short of ideas, is that nearly every full monster write-up we do has some adventure seeds. So if what you're dying for is an idea, you can pick something of the appropriate threat level out of the bestiary. You can look at the adventure seeds, you can pick one, and then you can hammer on it until it fits into the encounter-shaped hole that you have in your evening. There aren't always going to be perfect matches, right? And I can be a little blithe when I'm saying, hey, turn a World War I movie mine into a fantasy encounter. Not everyone is comfortable very quickly adapting one concept to another rules. But you don't have to do it my way. That's how I do it. All you need to do is look for that seed of an encounter, that seed of a hook, that thing that people have to do. In my experience, if nothing else is coming to you, you can, wherever the players are, just say, hey, an evil wizard wants everyone's eyeballs because you're heroes, and hero eyeballs are good for scrying spells, and he has sent a group of monsters or mercenaries or both to kill you. That's it. Whoever wherever you are. Are you at a tavern? Are you in the middle of the king's court? Whatever it is, are you out in the middle of the woods? Are the characters sleeping on a ship? This is the point where this long-running plot by an evil that has managed to avoid your notice up till now comes to pass. I grab some stat blocks, I throw a fight at you. And especially if you weren't super prepared, I recommend using no more than 1 or 2 stat blocks. And that doesn't have to mean no more than 1 or 2 monsters. I very frequently will say, okay, I need 1 moderate threat, and that's a lieutenant, and then a bunch of minor threats, and I'll throw them at people. You can also start an encounter on what you think is going to be the easy side of things, and then scale it if it's too easy as it goes. If you've decided a group of eyeball hunting mercenaries are going to attack the players, you can say, okay, they should be able to handle 2 mercenaries, no problem. 2 minor threat mercenaries, you put them out there, and everyone hasn't even had a round yet, and they're almost all dead. Well, then you can go, okay, so you all hear footsteps running towards you, and then at the beginning of the next round, the next 3 mercenaries come in, because while they've been hunting you down, they spread out in order to try and prevent you from escaping. Now that they've heard combat, they're rushing in. I'll throw 3 more mercenaries. Okay, well, 2 rounds later, they're all dead. I'll throw 3 more mercenaries at you. And that will lengthen out an encounter, and it also lets you scale it in real time. Take something you know is easy that your players can handle, and then keep throwing variants at them until they've used as many resources as you think for a fun evening. I don't hear Troy, so we and he was going to bring up the bestiary, and I don't see it, so we might be on our own. That's okay if we are, because you're here with you. I am going to look at some of the comments. What do we got here? Roll a save against toxic air from mushrooms. Perfect example. Even if they don't kill you when they blow up, Troy is gone. I heard him laugh, Jacob.
I'm back. I'm back.
He's here. Eyeball hunting Merc A, suppressing fire. Eyeball hunting Merc B. Where's our air support? Well, the air support might have been tainted by the toxic mushrooms. These are all people just riffing, and riffing can be a great way to take any aspect, any element, and turn it into a longer or more fulfilling encounter.
I like it. I was trying to share that PDF, and my computer was like, "No, you're not." So
I thought it was something like that, but it's okay. I riffed. I faked it. It's fine.
You're so good. Yeah. I mean, and that's the other thing too. Like, you're going to find yourself in situations where you're like, I wasn't supposed to do this by myself, but I guess I'll do it.
Jacob Blackman just wrote, just describing the hallucinations from the toxic mushrooms can expand the encounter. That also touches on another thing you can do if you need to, and you don't do it often, and that is the dream sequence.
You drug them.
Well, yes. Physically or magically, right? So dream sequences, in my opinion, get a bad rap because they are frequently used by, hey, people have this complicated encounter and there are these terrible consequences. And then there's this gotcha moment where the GM goes, oh, but it was all a dream, which can be very dissatisfying. But you can go the other route, right? You can say, hey, you all go to sleep and you think you're all awake, but there's a technicolor sky and the ground is made out of crawling banana snakes, and everything is clearly unreal, and a giant monster attacks you. And you have told them in advance, this isn't normal reality. Mm-hmm. And they can fight the giant monster, and if they defeat it, when they wake up, they can discover, hey, we went to sleep in a field of toxic mushrooms. Or maybe someone in a different reality was trying to summon them to save them as the great heroes. Or maybe there was a wizard trying to send them a prophetic dream that banana snakes were going to take over the world. The point is that you can create a scenario where I haven't had time to balance this perfectly. I don't know how well it'll work. I have no idea if this encounter is going to lead to consequences I don't want to deal with. Okay. You are all in the Stone Soups Festival, and they're throwing a bunch of incense on the fires, and you all start to see 42-foot tall chickens which attack you with fire breath. Obviously, at that, and again, I'm going a sort of silly extreme, which would not necessarily be appropriate for the tone of the game, but the prophetic dream, the hallucinogenic moment where people you can tell that the players, you can tell this isn't fully real, but your character sort of feels the need to react to it as it's real because to them it feels real right now, even though in retrospect they'll be sure it wasn't. So it's not a gotcha. It's just an opportunity for the GM to say, I don't know if you guys can handle a major threat. Hey, let's have a fight with one, and then I will have a feel for how dangerous your characters are.
I like that. Yeah, you can also do a lot of stuff where they can, like you talk about the prophetic, sort of visions and things, and oftentimes, like you can create a situation where people are guessing or kind of thinking about what's in the future and building it as they're talking about it. I just love that approach because it's really giving the player what they wanted but didn't realize they wanted prior to sitting down with you. I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that. All right, so now we've gotten through all of this stuff. Have you ever run a series of events where you are just it's just we're gonna ad hoc and kind of play around with it, or is it not as fun as it sounds?
So when you ask have I ever, you have to remember that I started gaming in 1982. So yes, right. I was of the era where at one point it was considered the height of dungeon adventure design to have people fight their way through the AD&D monster manual. So you start with all the A's and then all the B's and then all the C's.
How did you explain it that you're running into all of these creatures alphabetically, which is
it was a dungeon.
Yeah.
Right. Gotcha. It's Dungeon and Dragons. It's
right.
I don't know why there's a red dragon in the room, but there is. What are you going to do with it? And this, famously at one point, this was a little later. I was playing in someone else's game where there was a 10 by 10 room, and we discovered that it had a purple worm in it that was like 200 feet long. And so we all joked that when we opened the door, the purple worm burst out and filled the corridor, and we were just trying not to be crushed because it had been, slinky nerf crushed into the room and expanded outward. I have done a fair amount of ad hoc gaming. It is much more my norm if I'm trying to run a game without a whole lot of prep, to either very carefully set up a framework at the beginning of the game to explain why everything may be disconnected, or to take a very encounter-based pre-written adventure and run that. When I was first running the playtest for the Fantasy Core rulebook, I wanted to run some stuff with people that I had here. I created a campaign, and it's on my website at owenkcstevens.com, the world of Phage, which I think I spelled F-A-G-E, where I said, look, the world has all of these weird things that are constantly happening. They're always problems. They kind of require a specialist group of experts that do nothing but go from problem to problem to problem. And there are guilds that band these people together. And so your characters are professional adventurers. You work from a guild, and every game session will be one adventure, start, middle, and end, all that one session. And it doesn't matter who shows up here for the next session because they will just be on a new adventure. And then there was no real effort at continuity on my part. There began to be some continuity on their part. But also one of the things I did with that sometimes is at one point we had a fight that just went very, very, very badly for the players. I did, if it wasn't a TPK, it was darn close to a TPK. And so we carefully said, hey, I had said that this guild uses magic to make sure that people are on adventures of roughly the same difficulty level, because that's what I'm trying to play test. Here, obviously, I got it wrong. So it turns out that no one actually quite died, and you all get better. And then a few levels later, hey, that same event is occurring. It's been a year. Things are happening. We can now take our characters back and run the exact same adventure and see if players can handle it now with the rules changes and at higher level and with more idea, better tactics of what they were doing. And so I literally got 2 or even 3 days of adventuring, nights of gaming out of a single encounter just by the players having the opportunity. I go back in, but this time, instead of us all trying to damage everyone, we're going to pick one guy and we'll kill them, and then we'll move on to the next one. And the mage now has the Fate Arcana, so they're going to be handling a whole bunch of stuff to make sure we don't take crits, et cetera, et cetera.
That's excellent. Jason asks next week, are we going to turn what I say into an adventure? It's not fun if you try. you got to just be you, and we'll make that work. But it's got to It's got to be organic. When you start trying, then it just sort of falls apart, if you ask me. That's why we don't try here at Thursdage.
Well, we try all the time, just not this week.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
last time I told y'all if you didn't come up with an idea for a game, I would spend an hour telling you why you shouldn't run a humor-based game, and this seemed like a better idea than that. So
Yeah, but that means, boy, we're one subject down. If you want to share some thoughts and you want to see Owen unpack your idea and sort of, have you heard of that podcast called Exploder, where they take music and they just kind of pull it apart?
no,
Take songs and they pull all of it apart and they talk about the creation of it. There are oftentimes when I'm talking with you, Owen, that it reminds me of that. We have a very forensic kind of discussion about not just the actual act of enjoying and having fun, but what it takes to create these moments and manage these moments and to do so in a way that is sustainable over time. That is really remarkable. I think that that's a great opportunity. So we can talk about all kinds of stuff, but I love it when we have folks who are watching or listening and say, "Hey, I really want to know how to solve for this particular problem that I keep facing," or the other thing as well is we love a good arbitration. So if you've got something, you got a rule, you are certain you're right, but you and maybe someone who is hanging out with you for the evening, or is part of your group that's playing a particular game, an age game. Let us know. We'll arbitrate. Yeah, and your
well,
rulings are final.
or if you've got a rule that you're just not sure how it works, you're not arguing with anyone, you're just not sure how it's supposed to work out. But yeah, if you've got any ideas, we don't do this show because we enjoy the sound of our voice. Now, don't
Yes,
get
we
me
do.
wrong, I enjoy the sound of Troy's voice, I really do.
Oh, you.
But this show is for y'all. Here's my Okie coming in. Y'all showed up. Y'all are listening. Y'all are buying the games. So if y'all got something you'd like us to talk about, let us know and we'll turn it into a show.
Absolutely. Yeah. And really, all you got to do is send a note to let's play at greenronin.com and say, this is what I'm thinking. And I may write you back and ask for some deeper dives, but yeah, if it's something interesting or good, great. Maybe we'll have you pop on for a quick Q&A with us. Yeah.
I will note that if we don't do that, we may end up having to do a whole new set of stat this challenges. And if we do that, I'm hoping that Jacob will draw something weird and force us to come up with Fantasy Age stats for it.
Ren says, I'm so sad. Actually, they said they're so sad that they missed much of the show today. Work is odd. I hear you, my friend. I'm glad you popped in and were able to say hi at the very least. It was a really great program, I think. We talked about a lot of very interesting pieces of the puzzle of when it comes to sort of like, Owen, you're kind of like the jazz musician of tabletop role play. You just kind of tootly doot 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 doot. And I am, I don't know what I would be in that analogy. The trumpet. No, kind of the jazz tuba. I'd be the tuba.
Oh, you can do jazz on the tuba. I played tuba all through high school.
All right.
You can absolutely jazz out on a tuba. If usually a sousaphone, but yes. So Jacob has said I can do that to the challenge to draw something weird. So Jacob, if you're actually up to that, when you've drawn 1 to 3 weird things, don't show me. Send them directly to Troy at let's play at greenronin.com so that I have no idea what's coming. And if you actually do that, we'll tackle that. And we can talk about, he would be the Troy angle. We can talk not just about statting things up, but we can explode the art of monster design and monster supported encounters a little bit with some Blackman art examples.
I love that. That's brilliant. And I also just love seeing your mind work, Owen, when you really I've thrown some pretty weird things at you and you've really managed to kind of, put it all together. It always involves having a lot of eyeballs, I think. You have to look back on our past art. But it's always a joy. And I agree with Charlotte, who says that it's always a really great show. I have a lot of fun. Thursdage is all about just chatting with folks, having a good time, but always certain to have a very enjoyable thought-provoking opportunity to just hear you kind of do your thing, Owen. You are a true talent and a joy. And yeah, like Chris says, it's always great to hear Owen ramble. It truly is. I wish I sounded that great when I rambled. I obviously do not. So in the waning 5 minutes of the program, talk to me a bit about what do you got cooking that's outside in the world. You talked about your website. How's the Patreon going? What are some things we can look forward to?
So the Patreon is going reasonably well. It and my website have been very Starfinder focused recently. And there are reasons for that, which I can't discuss. But I've had Starfinder on my mind a lot. I was one of the design leads of Starfinder. And so one of the things that's been happening recently is every couple of weeks I've been doing a different podcast. Troy, I've been podding other people.
Oh no.
Yeah. Called Owen Explains It All through the BAMF network, where we take a movie and we discuss how things in that movie could be used in a Starfinder game. So like we took one of the episodes of What If and discussed how you could add super shrinking to your game. And so we talk about it on the podcast, and then the rules end up on my blog, and then the blog is supported through the Patreon. And the Patreon is currently right up there in the 3 digits. And there is a tier of support if it gets up there high enough, where I'll start adding a video, which is frequently a storytime video, every month to what people are guaranteed for me to produce based on that level of support.
Where do they go?
The blog is owenkcstevens.com, which every article has a link to the Patreon. The Patreon is patreon.com/Owen KC Stevens.
Nice, which is also your name, Owen KC Stevens.
As it happens, yeah.
I love that. Thursdage comes to you every Thursday, nearly every Thursday, 2 p.m. Pacific, here in all the places. But then on Mondays, we change the set around. We get all the costumes on for Mutants and Masterminds Monday. And that happens at 2 o'clock too. You've got Crystal Frazier, Steve Kinson. You've got me, and then you've also got our buddy. Why am I forgetting his name? Oh my God. Alex Thomas. God, I just totally blanked, and I'm sorry about that, Alex. You know I love you dearly. But we all sit and we talk with folks about things that are coming up. We've got it's been the summer of Starhaven, and we're moving into the autumn. And so, big changes coming, exciting stuff. We're working with Patreon to create that content, and it's really an excellent opportunity. The other thing that we'll be doing, keep an eye out for us. We will be at both Gen Con, and then the next event will be what is the next event, Owen? It is
Origins.
Origins, thank you. Yeah, it's Origins, and so we'll be there with this small crew. We'll be masked up, and we want you to be too. But we'll be doing a lot of digital events, so keep your eyes open for that. Reminder: send a note to Let's Play at greenronin.com with your creepy creatures or your whatever it may be drawn. Keep it relatively family friendly, and we'll get a good session of Stat This going for the next Thursdage with Owen KC Stevens. That is it, my friend. Any final words? Anything you'd like to say before we move through the rest of our week?
I'm going to give a shout out to Paul Camp, who did a book called The Prepless Game Master. That's not something I had anything to do with. It's not a Green Ronin product, but I know I've read it, and a lot of people find it really, really useful as a way to avoid prep work. So that's my suggestion. Go check that out if this comes up a lot.
Fantastic. And we'll end on this note from the prolifically posting Jason Waltman, who says, tip your GM. All right, friends. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.